Is this the best CNN can do? Well, it certainly wasn't a great day for Dana Bash when she was taken to school by two party leaders on the same day across the political aisle, Bernie Sanders and Jim Jordan. And both of them were practically screaming to get her attention for the real reason the Democrats lost so massively. Watch this exchange with Bernie Sanders and you'll know exactly what I mean.
I want to start with the scathing response that you gave after the Democrats lost, Kamala Harris lost pretty big. You said the Democrats abandoned the working class. The chairman of the DNC called it straight up BS and said Joe Biden is the most pro-worker president of my lifetime. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she disagreed with you. She added, quote, Bernie Sanders has not won. Do you stand by what you said?
Oh, absolutely. Look, Joe Biden is a friend of mine. I've been proud to work with him on an agenda which has been very strongly in favor of the working class. Biden promised to be the most progressive president since FDR in many ways on domestic issues. I think he kept his word. But here is the reality. The working class of this country is angry, and they have a reason to be angry. We are living in an economy today, Dana, where the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. 25% of elderly people are trying to get by on $15,000 a year or less. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, and parents all over this country worry that their kids may have a lower standard of living than they do. That is the economic reality. And what Donald Trump did is provided an explanation. He went around, he said, I know you're angry, and the reason is that zillions of illegal immigrants are coming over, and they're eating your cats and dogs and everything else. That's the reason. Well, obviously, that is not the reason. The reason is, in my view, that we have an unprecedented level of corporate greed today, more income and wealth inequality, and people on top want it all. And we need an agenda that says to the working class, we're going to take on these powerful special interests and create an economy and a government that works for you. And by the way, that can't happen unless you get big money out of politics. We got to get rid of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision so billionaires do not continue to buy elections.
Okay, I admit that it was an embarrassingly bad take from Bernie Sanders. As much as I love how he dismantles the establishment left narratives from a populist angle, including this one to Dana Bash, he's plain wrong for saying what propelled the working class voter to Donald Trump in this election. No, it's not because he told them the immigrants were eating cats and dogs. It's a bit more complicated than that. Before I tell you, though, I'd love you to be a part of the conversations we always have every day, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss out. Now, Donald Trump's offer to the working class was something that the left in this country, which has ruled for 12 of the last 16 years, has failed to deliver on. He promised them a holistic approach to inflation that included things like protecting the vulnerable American worker from an influx of cheap labor from abroad, drilling for fossil fuels to make energy much cheaper, stopping foreign wars that destroy delicate supply chains, and then cut down the size and waste of the government and bureaucratic machine. These are solutions that no one in the Democratic Party has given them other than trying to pacify the working class voter with promises of a much broader welfare state that ultimately always makes money out of the people's pockets, no matter what. Not just that, while all of this happened, the populist left was pushed to the sidelines as the Democratic Party got engulfed by an elitist and corporate establishment wing that had no connection to the pro-working class left that traditionally defined them. And surprisingly enough, saying this fact has even got Bernie Sanders on the front lines of fire from prominent leftist Democrats for reaching out to now right-leaning figures like Joe Rogan, even though he was a solid Bernie supporter Democrat just a few years ago.
Let me give one example, perhaps, of this kind of dynamic that we're hearing about. Joe Rogan, very popular podcaster, he endorsed Donald Trump in the final days of the election. 4 years ago, you went on his podcast. You got a lot of blowback for doing that and for touting that he endorsed you. So is this the kind of example of Democrats perhaps shunning or vilifying people who don't totally agree with them?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Look, you can have an argument with Rogan, agree with him, disagree with him, but what's the problem going on in those shows? It's hard for me to understand that. So I think we've got to get, and clearly you have an alternative media out there, a lot of podcasts that have millions and millions of viewers. get on the show. Disagree with you here. I agree with you there. I don't see a problem in doing that. And you're right. I got vilified by some of the Democratic establishment because I went on Rogan's show. Now a lot of other people are doing just that.
And here's the evidence of that, which we've seen after this election. It's that the Democrats in this election have fared better electorally with the richest 30% of Americans than the poorest 30%. While it's the reverse for the Republican Party. Can you believe that? It's in line with the sentiment on the ground, where studies like this from Navigator Research revealed that, quote, even voters who previously backed Democrats cast the party as weak and overly focused on diversity and elites. Why couldn't the Democratic Party get the message before it was too late? Former Democrats like RFK Jr. put this question to Bernie Sanders on X when Bernie was lamenting the Democrat loss as a consequence of abandoning the working class for elitist identity politics, saying, quote, it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right. By the way, if you want an image of just how disconnected most establishment left political and media figures have become from this reality, here's CNN Van Jones literally touting and gloating about the idea that Kamala Harris represents the real billionaire class.
The message that worked for Kamala Harris on the doors in the barbershops was a message she never used. It was, Kamala Harris wants to lift you up. Donald Trump wants to lock you up. We never prosecuted Donald Trump on all the stuff he wanted to do on stop and frisk. We gave him a free pass. Donald Trump said he wanted to bring back stop and frisk, a lot of stuff that scared the crap out of young black men when we told them. But the other thing that we were able to do with Kamala on the doors was, Donald Trump is a little baby billionaire. He's a little billionaire. You want to be rich? You're a young black man. You want to be an owner? You want to be an entrepreneur? You want to be a provider? Why are you following this little baby billionaire? Kamala Harris represents real billionaires. She represents California. She represents the biggest bunch of billionaires in the world. Vote for her and donate to her. And so you begin to link into the aspirations of these young men who don't like what Donald Trump says, but they like what he's been able to do with his life.
You wouldn't believe this if you didn't see it, but that's apparently what has become of the modern Democratic Party, and the response from the American electorate? Well, here's an incredible map by the New York Times showing us all the countries in the United States, with a vast majority of them swinging right in this election. And yes, that includes many different races, classes, and groups that the Democrats unfortunately just put into a box and spoke down on an identity basis. And you know, a part of that condescension? It's mainstream left-wing media that, instead of making a positive case for Kamala Harris, employed a strategy of fear-mongering Donald Trump's presidency, which is a strategy that blew up in their face. Take a look at this, for example, when Dana Bash butted heads with Republican Representative Jim Jordan over the supposed lawfare that Donald Trump will unleash against his political opponents, completely slipping under the rug the fact that most of America saw the same happen to Donald Trump over the last 4 years.
Okay, so let's go back to what you just brought up, which is the question about retribution. You also lead the weaponization of the federal government subcommittee. Trump has repeatedly threatened to prosecute Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Liz Cheney, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, General Mark Milley, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, New York AG Letitia James, and that's just some of the people he has talked about. Do you support him using the Justice Department to go after the people who disagree?
He didn't do it his first term. What I support is stopping.
Right, but this is a second term.
What I support is stopping this lawfare, stopping this political targeting, political cases. We all know the Fonnie Willis case, the Alvin Bragg case, and the Jack Smith cases were all driven by politics. The American people understood it. That's why they had this overwhelming win. One of the reasons of this overwhelming win for President Trump. So I'm against the retribution. I'm against the Justice Department saying if you're a mom and dad showing up at a school board meeting, we're going to investigate you. I'm against the FBI putting together a memorandum at the Richmond field office which said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist.
So I just want to...
We want all that to stop.
I just want to put a button on this. So what you are saying is that all of the times that President Trump said so many things about people that he promised that he would go after them and prosecute them, you were going to encourage him not to do that?
Well, all I know is what he didn't do.
I know, but we're talking
about lock her up. You know, he's talking about his opponent in 2016, Secretary Clinton, talked about lock her up. He didn't do that. He didn't go. But the Democrats went after him.
I know, but I'm talking about Donald
Trump's
Trump's second term.
I mean,
going forward. Since then, he has said many times.
I don't think any of that's going to happen because we're the party who's against political prosecution. We're the party who's against going after your opponents using lawfare. In fact, I think this is one of the issues that the
So it
American
was
people
just a
said,
campaign rhetoric? It wasn't real?
well, I think he's pointing out what's going on. The retribution. Actually, Liz Cheney on January 6th went after President Trump, said things that weren't accurate, I think, in their report. The other individuals he's talked about have been part of this retribution going after President Trump. Never forget, it started clear back before he was in office. They spied on his campaign in 2016.
I am not talking about...
for 8 years, they've been going after President Trump.
He won.
He sure did. He won big.
He won big.
I think if you zoom out, that tells you something. It's that the entire Democratic political and media strategy will need to do something important in the next election in order to win or remain relevant. Replace Donald Trump as your political center of gravity with the working class voter, especially now when Donald Trump is about to embark on his second and final term. That strategy is about to expire in 2028, leaving very little time to shift the political sands and the popular Democrat perception. But let me know in the comments if you think that's possible, because looking at conversations like this, well, it's hard to believe that the party has woken up to the realization in the last 2 months after the election.